This is Dan Kahn, and welcome to Fast Talk from Kahn Media. We have a great panel for everybody today. Our topic is the year without shows in the luxury market. We have gathered the world's leading automotive and luxury brands to talk about the state of their industry, how things are affected with the cancellation of most of the major events, consumer events, trade shows, in some cases auto shows, venues. And we're going to talk to some different leaders from different corners of the industry, as well as from the media, about how they've been sort of handling the pivot in 2020, and learn a little bit more about how they are pivoting and what they're doing to get through this very strange year. So first, we have Rob Borrett, who is the PR manager from Lotus Cars. So thank you for joining us, Rob. I know it's late there. We have Kathy Gohari, who's the director of client engagement at Valentino and the VP of the Rodeo Drive Committee. We have Rory Jurnecka, the features editor from Automobile Magazine. We have Terry Karges, the executive director of the Petersen Automotive Museum, and also a partner in Moto America, a motorcycle road racing series. And Gordon McCall, the founder of McCall's Motorworks Revival and overall Monterey impresario. So thank you all very much for joining us. Appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time. I know things are crazy these days. Rob, do you want to kick things off and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and where you work?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks for the invite. It's nice to be here and talking about this. My name is Rob Borrett. I'm PR manager for press content and launch programs at Lotus Cars in the UK. I work at the UK headquarters or the global headquarters of the company. Normally, you can see me during COVID. I've turned my spare room into a working office, and you find me working from home most of the time, like a lot of the other people. If you don't know who Lotus are, we are the home of the lightweight sports car.
Very good, well said. How about Kathy? Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And you've got a couple of jobs, and we'd like to learn more.
Sure. So I work for Valentino. I've worked for them for 18 years. I am the director of client engagement for the company, and I've had a few different positions within the company. I also sit on the executive board of the Rodeo Drive Committee. I am a current executive board member as the VP, and we represent over 70 retailers and landowners on Rodeo Drive. So a little bit of everything: hotels, restaurants, and luxury retail on Rodeo.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy. Rory, why don't you tell us what you do and where you are?
Sure. Yeah, I am Rory Jurnecka. I'm the features editor at Automobile Magazine, and Automobile is part of Motor Trend Group, which has Motor Trend Magazine, of course, Hot Rod Magazine, a bunch of legacy titles like that, as well as our Motor Trend on-demand video channel. And we're partnered with Discovery Television now, so we have all the Motor Trend network programming on our on-demand channels, as well as our network on cable. And I've been doing this for about 14 years now. I actually began at Motor Trend Magazine and transitioned over to Automobile Magazine about 6 years ago. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Terry, the man of many talents.
I'm at the Petersen Automotive Museum, and this is actually, next month will be my 8th year. So enjoying life over here, although a little bit quiet these days with COVID, but and I guess we'll talk about it later, but we've been pivoting to become a virtual museum, and that's going quite nicely. But all in all, a great place to be, a wonderful place to work, great board of directors, and a great team.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. And Gordon, you have a few different roles that I'd love to hear about. So can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing?
Well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me on today. Enjoy this panel for sure. As you mentioned earlier, I am president and CEO of McCall Events Incorporated. We produce, along with my wife Molly and our office staff, we produce the kickoff event for Monterey Car Week at the Monterey Jet Center, McCall's Motorworks Revival. I'm also the co-founder of the Quail, a motorsports gathering. For the past 17 years, we've put on a fun little show that is a complement to Car Week. And It's one of those things where I'm local to the Monterey Peninsula, so I've got a little bit of a finger on the pulse with car activities during Car Week. I was with Pebble Beach for 28 years before I started the Quail. Next year will mark our 30th year of the Jet Center event. So got a little institutional knowledge of the affairs that take place during that week. And as you said earlier, Dan, it's really weird this year without a Car Week. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's a great transition too. Thank you. So with that in mind, I guess let's just dive right into it. The pandemic, at least for me personally, and I'm fortunate enough to have worked with all of you at some point or another, and I think for all of you, and I think a lot of businesses and companies and events around the country and around the world, when this thing started really kind of becoming well known in late February, early March, I think we all thought this was something that would sort of blow over in a few months. I think early on, nobody expected us to be where we are now, about to enter August, still in lockdown for the most part. So with that in mind, how has it forced each of you to sort of re-examine both your role within your organization and also sort of what your organization does, and how has it sort of impacted you both personally and your group as a whole? Gordon, you kind of were the last to talk, and you've got a few different events happening in Monterey, and obviously that's sort of the hot button issue right now. How did that affect you first?
Well, Dan, so I think running a lean operation in advance of all this it was critical. There's no doubt about it. I've always felt with my event company, we've always had to contract and expand when needed. We went through this in 2008 with luxury brands. I deal in the aviation industry as well. We brought aviation interests and automotive interests together at our Jet Center event. And the aviation world in 2008 was hit really, really, really hard. And, we wondered, are we going to be able to have an event that year? Well, that's over 10 years ago now. This is kind of crazy, but we survived that. And I think the reason why was being flexible. Being an annual event as well, Dan, we've had to rely on digital content from the earliest days, because we're only able to get in front of our audience once a year, so we have to stay in touch with our customers, our prospects, our partners. We have to stay in touch with everybody throughout the year. So I have to admit, it wasn't that big of an adjustment to make. The fear side of it is really the big adjustment. I think we're all living in the middle of that right now. How long is this going to go on? I look back at, you can't help but look back at 1918 and think, we went through a hellacious pandemic and came out of it, and kind of got back to living again. So I think we're all pretty optimistic that's going to happen again here. It's just a matter of when. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm getting a little bit of virtual fatigue at this time. I know just personally, I'm involved with, I think it's at least 6 online shows of sorts. Just to stay relevant and in front of people. And I just cannot wait to get back in a car and go out and enjoy a car with friends. I think I may be speaking for all of us in that regard. So long answer to a short question, but adaptability is the key right now. That's for sure.
So I couldn't agree more. And Rob, you work for a company whose tagline is "for the drivers."
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly, that is one of the few things you can still do that's socially distanced, I suppose, as long as I guess you're alone in the car or with a family member. How is that affecting Lotus and everything from press drives to events and what you're doing at the corporate level?
Straight away it turned absolutely everything on its head, really, didn't it? I was with you guys in LA first week of March, making plans for the rest of the year, and Monterey and all of that was part of that. And suddenly I got home, and then I think the week later we were literally sent home and put into lockdown. And so our big plans were really thrown up in the air, and it's very much like Gordon said, adaptability. We flipped everything, the whole business, all the way from the IT infrastructure through to the PR strategy. IT invested a huge amount of money within a week or two and just turned around the ability for us all to be able to go home and work from home. And we had to do the same in all of our departments and look to the alternatives that were there. And digital forums like this and connectivity in the world just gave so many people so many opportunities to carry on talking. But you are lacking that key part of your life, and that is driving a car, and that is what we all do. And we need journalists to drive cars. We need to go to events to meet people, to get people in those cars. And that was taken away from us. So we had to look elsewhere, and now it is coming back, and press events are happening, and we turned one around as quickly as we could here in the UK. As soon as lockdown was easing, not over, but easing, we were able to just make an event straight away.
That's impressive. And you started a podcast during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, we looked at all sorts of things to do and entertain and engage with our followers and our fans and for ourselves, really. You know, we had being an engineering department as well. I don't know if you guys saw that a lot of car manufacturers in the UK suddenly turned into respirator manufacturers and trolley manufacturers for the NHS and for hospitals. And we did the same, and we had some very clever people working on a PEEP valve, which was the hospitals had plenty of the respirators, but they didn't have these specialist valves that they needed. So we started producing them for them. It's very hard when you have an engineer creating, you know, literally life or death pieces of work like that, and someone like me in the PR side of things, that, you know, we make things look pretty and drive cars, and I don't have the brains to be able to save people's lives like that. So we came up with a podcast that seemed about the most enjoyable way we could help people. If it helped people, it literally just started because we wanted to entertain, and I called 6 of my closest well-known friends in the industry and said, please, will you talk to me for an hour?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
and
cool.
they all gave up their time. Yeah, it was good of them, you know.
And content is king right now. It's been interesting to see how kind of the bar has moved around a little bit during quarantine as well. Rory, you know, Rob sort of mentioned press events, and we're talking about content. Obviously, you know, the print magazine business was in a lot of turmoil before COVID, and then this thing happened, and you're working for one of the bigger titles in the industry. How has this affected you guys, and both kind of as a title, but also as sort of that segment of the industry? How, you know, when there aren't a lot of long lead events and there aren't a lot of events and all the auto shows get canceled, how do you pivot and find content? What are you doing?
Yeah, I have to say, you know, I won't lie, it hasn't been easy. That said, I'm really proud of the job that our team has done. We're in a lot of different forms of media. We still have a few print magazines left. We also have a number of websites, brand websites, and we have all of our video operations. So it's a lot to get done. And, you know, so much of the work that we do is surrounded with other people. I mean, whether it's just a photography or a video team, or it is a car launch that you're having to travel to, fly to most often. A lot of them are international. And not being able to do all that has really caused us to take a look and say, okay, so what kind of content can we produce without all these traditional events happening? So one of the saving graces for us has been that we've still been getting new car deliveries. So we've still been reviewing new cars, and the automakers, Lotus and everyone else, have been terrific about that. And, you know, we've really been looking for ways to make this safe for everyone too, because a lot of us really are concerned about the potential repercussions of the virus. So, you know, when you get a car delivered now, it's completely hands-free versus, you know, they just get dropped off outside with the keys inside, everything's sanitized, wiped down. And, you know, whereas before you'd stand around and you'd have a conversation with the delivery driver for a half hour about the car or about life or whatever else. And our video operations have been tough. We've been turning those around with doing some videos from home garages, from some of our restoration shows. Our video hosts from that have been working on their own projects at home and recording them themselves. So that's been excellent. And beyond that, we've been looking back at a lot of our archives. We've been looking back at a lot of the classic content that we've created and creating more of that. Looking at areas, looking at cars maybe that haven't gotten the recognition that they should. Doing timelines about histories of cars through the generations, doing valuation articles and market articles, and following all the online car auctions that we've been having. So there's still a lot of content out there. You just have to look for it, and it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that we're meeting. So.
Excellent, thank you. And speaking of content, you know, I think, Terry, you're sitting in a building that's normally filled with, you know, 1,000 or more visitors at any given time. And I think right now it's probably fairly empty by order of the mayor. how have you pivoted, and certainly content's played a part of that. Can you tell us kind of what the Petersen's been doing?
Interesting. 3 weeks before the shutdown, which for us came on March 15th, we made a presentation to the board that we wanted to create a major digital campaign, and with their approval, we were prepared. And 2 days after the shutdown, we were actually giving virtual tours through the vault, and discovered an awful lot of ways that we could create content from what exists here in the museum. Polished that, went through a few different presenters, made some mistakes, and it did some things right, but we found that with the stories that we can tell around each and all of the cars, it's fascinating. We've gone from one editor to 2 editors. We're hiring a producer. We've got 2 on-air people that will be the on-camera personalities. And one of the goals that we stated that to the board, our goals would be that first of all, we've got 80% of our attendance comes from 40 miles around. So we need to build the brand and awareness outside of Los Angeles. And right now we're running at about 50% of our viewerships coming from outside the country, which is pretty stout. The goals, the financial goals, viewership goals, and subscriber goals that we set that we would achieve or attempt to achieve by 2020, we've already blown past those. All you have to do is shut down the world, so everybody's sitting around looking for content. That was easy, but it's been pretty dramatic in the growth on that. And the other thing that we found is that because there are so many people that have time and are in a similar situation, that getting people to talk about themselves or their own collections and putting that on video, let's not call it easy, because a lot of people want to remain private, but we've found some real partnerships, and we've got, oh my gosh, we've had 90 different garage tours taped that are online, and some very spectacular collections, very private people doing some things that they might not have otherwise done. But it's been rewarding. As a brand builder for us, we've found it to be successful, and it's fun to do. I mean, you're talking to a wide variety of people, and they're all in some ways enthused about supporting us. On the Moto America side, it's been interesting because we're racing without an audience. Actually the first race we ran was at Road America, no audience. The second race we had an audience. There's also a good news, bad news on the silver lining on some of these things, because most professional sports are off the air. Our broadcasts were scheduled to be on Fox 2, and yet because there's no sports, they put us on Fox 1. The difference there is you go from 30,000 households to 280,000 households. So this weekend we're racing at Road Atlanta, and no audience, but we'll be on Fox 1 both Saturday and Sunday. In fact, they're going to run Fox, the first race, the Saturday race, the hour in front of the Sunday race. So they've given us 2 hours on Fox 1. Phenomenal numbers, but nobody in the grandstands, no popcorn. But another silver lining that we can't.
And it takes people are the key element to that whole thing, right? So I mean, it's
yeah.
Speaking of which, and thanks, Terry, that's really good intel. And Kathy, so the Rodeo Drive Committee, you've got probably the most iconic retail street in the world, populated by some of the most iconic brands on the planet. There's no real residential anything on Rodeo. It's all businesses.
There is south of the boulevard or north, but
okay.
This main area is the creme de la creme of all the best brands from around the world. And
what do you do in a situation like this? How has the
obviously you and I have been working with each other for the past couple of years. So about 3 years ago, the committee and the city partnered up for creating more in-person experiential opportunities for the city and Rodeo Drive specifically. Beverly Hills Open Late program started, and people from all over the city, people who had not normally would come to visit the street, started coming to us and staying later hours, and it was very successful. We are all brick and mortar stores. We had been fighting with the online competition of many of the brands, and our goal was to invite you into our stores, invite you onto the street, come see us in person. And then COVID happened and said, please stop, don't come to see us, you know. And we needed to engage them. So we kind of took a whole different approach and went back to the virtual world and said, we need to keep our connection with our clients, with our visitors, and keep them engaged so that when this is over, there is a place for them to come and that there is no disconnect. So the strategy has been, like everybody else, very similar depending on, you know, what subject we're talking about. The market is very much the same. We're dealing with the same people. And we've had different phases through the past 3 months. At first, everybody was locked in their homes. They were not even opening the windows. And then little by little, now we're finding as summer is rolling out, many of them are finding isolated places like their vacation homes or mountains and beaches where they're finding places to be. And the only way we can get to them is how we're all talking to each other today, virtually. You know, as Gordon was saying, I sometimes spend 5 to 6 hours a day on different calls with different people. We all try to do the same thing. Our sales associates are instructed to engage with the clients with virtual styling sessions and virtual appointments. So everybody has learned how to use Zoom. Let's just put it this way. Brands are merchandising their collections very much. You know, there are still, as Rob was mentioning, you know, Europe is a little bit ahead of the game. You know, you don't see as many masks in the pictures as you see here now. We are still a few steps behind. So a lot of our European counterparts are already talking about runway shows towards the end of the year. Whether that becomes a reality, it remains to be seen. So meanwhile, many brands are creating exceptional works of film and cinematography. I mean, that work that's being produced by companies these days. Dior just did a short film as their fashion show, and it was exquisite. So creativity is really coming out on behalf of all. Then this is the first time in over 2.5 decades we didn't have the Father's Day car show on Rodeo Drive, right? I mean,
Right.
That's kind of historical in itself. Super sad. Normally at this time, we would have tons of animation in the evenings and afternoons in the summer months to attract all the visitors who are coming from local and abroad. I was just today I had lunch with one of my colleagues who represents one of the main hotels in town, and I just found out that most of the countries, especially the Middle East countries, they have been forbidden to come to the US. That the only way they are allowed to visit, let's say there's an emergency of a medical reason or schooling or family, it has to be approved by the king before they can even leave the country. So we already are pretty much aware of what we're looking forward to for the next few months, who's coming and who's not coming. So engaging local, as you mentioned, even, you know, the majority of our visitors are within a 40-mile radius, and trying to reach out to the mountains and the lakes and the vacation homes. That is our target right now.
Well, and you mentioned something kind of, you mentioned a lot of interesting things, but one thing that I wanted to follow up on is you were talking about sort of the importance of content creation and creativity. And I think you're right. And I know several fashion brands have had virtual fashion shows. That's been really interesting. We mentioned, you know, the Rob's podcast, you know, the Petersen is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is doing basically a digital car week. What other examples have any of you seen of things that really stood out to you where you saw that? Because again, like you mentioned, I've been sort of getting Zoom burnout where I'm spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day on my iPad. It's like enough with all the Zoom calls, but you have to do it. but every once in a while, something sort of sneaks through and I go, wow, that was really cool. Or that was really
You
creative.
know, Dan, we just started from Rodeo Drive before COVID. We got funding to start a podcast, a Rodeo Drive podcast. And sure enough, the first episode hit at the end of May. The timing could not have been better for our life current situation. And the engagement from other countries has been phenomenal. We are so surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how many people are interested outside of the country to listen to this podcast. I personally think what it comes to what Terry was saying, even now, what we're doing, it all ends up being about emotion and experiences and stories. The reason our podcast is doing so well is because real people are talking about their experiences on Rodeo Drive and their histories. And it's the same with all of you. Stories is what people connect with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Gordon, you know, you're sort of our man on the ground in Monterey, and obviously normally in about a week and a half, we'd all be, except for you live there, the rest of us would be heading that direction. And you produce sort of the kickoff event to the entire week of events. And your event, more than almost any other event on the peninsula, is so much about relationships, and it's such a social thing. It's not just about the cars, it's about the people and having a good time. And that is something that is sort of hard to replicate over Zoom. How have you and Molly pivoted your event, but also, you know, what's sort of the vibe on the ground in Monterey? How are the locals reacting, and how are the car collectors from around the world who normally come to your backyard, how are they reacting? What do you hear?
You know, Dan, it's across the board as far as emotions. I think there's a few people out there that are kind of relieved. And I have to say, this is going to sound strange, but I haven't had a summer in the last 45 years. I went straight from Carmel High School to helping park cars at the Pebble Beach show, and I've been all hands on deck every summer since 1974. And so getting a little bit of a break is creating a bit of a reset for perhaps what's going to come when it comes to Car Week. I think Car Week, it's tough for me to say this because it gets viewed as being a little I don't know what the right word there is, but a little self-motivated. Car Week has hit a saturation point. We all know that. The Monterey Peninsula is at critical mass during that. It's no longer Car Week. It's Car 2 weeks, right, at a minimum. You know, I've always thought, and again, it's tough being an event organizer because it kind of looks like, well, you just don't want anyone else joining the fun. That's not it. There's only so many roads. There's only so many restaurants. There's only so many hotels. And it was getting a little thick. You know, it used to be not that many years ago where you could kind of participate in a lot of different things. Now it's so a la carte that you've got to be really careful about what you pick and choose to do. And so I think it makes, from supporting companies, it makes it difficult to figure out, where do we spend our money? Where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? Getting back to your pivoting question, Dan, I find that in the old days, and I'm going to refer to the old days as pre-COVID, anything that was done digitally was viewed as something that you could monetize. It seemed like that was the push. It's like, it's a value added to our conventional platform when we go digital, right? Let's monetize this. I don't think that's what it's about anymore. I think this digital content and digital communication is all about staying in touch with people that we care about, partners, prospects, clients, you name it. I really think that's key today. It's not so much about, if I put this much time in it and spend this much on digital, what are we getting in return? I think what we're getting in return now that has the value are these relationships that we're maintaining. I think that's a heavy influence right now. At least it is for me. Staying in touch is key right now.
That's a great point, especially when we're all locked in our houses.
Exactly.
So it's more important than ever, right? Interesting. So on that note, Rory, you're a person who, for a living, I mean, I think a lot of people would consider you as someone who has probably the coolest job on the planet. You get to fly all over the place and drive cool cars and go to cool places and attend big debuts when they're bringing the car to your house, but otherwise you aren't, necessarily leaving a lot. How do you continue to tell those stories? And do you have any examples of things that have worked really well for you guys, and any challenges that you've had to tackle?
Well, I think one thing that we've really learned over the last few months is that all of the editors that we have on staff all have slightly different interests, and we all have our individual sort of knowledge bases and our individual likes and areas where we feel more comfortable. So we've done a lot of content kind of individually like that, playing on our various strengths as editors and our various knowledge bases. I kind of specialize in classic cars. That's been my role at Automobile since I came on board. And so I've been looking more at, what are some unique cars that, like I said before, don't get a lot of attention? What are some cars that might be the next big thing? What are markets doing now that people aren't going to live auctions, that we're having maybe fewer in-person sales face-to-face, that people are being cautious about that? So how is the market changing? How is the market adapting? How is the classic car community adapting? And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is this whole virtual car week. I'm looking forward to seeing how this all goes. I actually grew up about a half hour north of Monterey in a town called Aptos, and I have been going to car week since the early 80s when I was about 2 feet tall. And so I'm enjoying looking forward to seeing how all this goes. It's important that we keep something going this year, and it's important that we keep some kind of sense of hope alive among all of us car enthusiasts, that things will get better and that we're able to still have a good time even if we can't all be together in person. So much of the events like Monterey and the auto shows, all the auto shows across the world, are the people that you see there, right? A lot of these cars maybe you've seen before from one year to the next, but being able to see your old friends and being able to meet new friends and is so much of that weekend. And so thanks to the Petersen and Con Media and everyone for helping put together this kind of digital package this year. We're at Motor Trend Group, we're sponsoring, and we're really excited to see it all come together.
Awesome. Well, that was a great transition. Thank you. So, so Terry, can you tell us a little about, how this came about and what you're doing in lieu of normal car week?
That as the Switzerland of the automotive world, we're in a position, a unique position where we can actually work with everyone and provide, say, a forum for everyone to at least stay, not relevant, but to keep the dream alive, have some kind of a face on the week. We've been blessed with great fortune, and there's a good team putting it together. And thank you and your team for all that you guys have done too, Dan. But the idea that all of the money in all of the companies and all of the people, all the partners that were headed to Monterey, all of a sudden had nothing to do, and a pocket full of money and things and a brand to promote. And so how can we help really was the discussion. How can we help with host a car week? And it really started to formulate immediately after that. Just making calls, we found there'd be 7 different major brand car reveals that week. We've got virtually everybody on board, but the Pebble Concours on Sunday itself, and we put our own together. But thank you, Gordon, and the Jet Center for participating. As I mentioned earlier, the Motor Trend Group is on board. I mean, there are so many wonderful things going on. I was talking before we got started about, I saw a video from Alex Gurney's shot of the All-American Racers shop, and the history that on all of the cars that Dan built and all of the races and what they've done with that shop is phenomenal. My favorite part is that Phil Remington's work top is exactly the way it was when he left. They've nailed his apron to the countertop, but really,
you're not a Dan Gurney fan or anything, right? Like you couldn't tell from looking at this.
I had the pleasure with Dan for a couple of years, and we helped put the Toyota deal together. And that was quite a journey in its own right. But the work that's going on for Car Week is now developing into some other areas that we think can go on. what is also a mystery is that when we go back to work, how much of this continues the way it is? The eyeballs that are available right now, will it ever be the same? You know, maybe in 20 years when there's that many more people on the planet, but how long is this kind of effort sustainable at this level? But that's not important right now because today it is what it is. So we're enjoying that.
So I guess a follow-up, a couple things. So just so people understand, when we say that the Petersen is doing Petersen Car Week and it's a virtual event, and we're going to have, I think there's a BMW debut, the Gordon Murray car is going to do its US debut through Canapa. We've got several, we have auctions, right? Several different auction houses are doing auctions, and some will be live and some will be digital. How can people watch all that? What is it on social? It's all on YouTube, right?
All on YouTube, yeah. Petersen.org. I think that you know, the fun part of this whole thing is that there's some genuine enthusiasm on the part of the people that are participating. That's one of the fun things. Goodwood is in with us. The Sonoma Speed Festival, Monterey Historics. I mean, it goes on and on and on. That's and again, the garage tours. Miles Collier is recording a presentation. He's going to do a walkthrough of his shop and talk about the Revs Institute. So there's some great information that'll be, you know, provided over the week.
And I read an article a few years ago, and it was a case study on the Cincinnati Museum of Art. I think it was, I might be wrong, I think it was the Cincinnati Museum of Art, and how they were approached to loan some of their collection to Steve Wynn when he opened one of his hotels in Vegas. And the board didn't want to do it at first. And then they sort of realized that their mission statement wasn't to have a building full of art. It was to share that art with the public. And that was a way to do that in a really big way by taking it to Vegas and letting more people see it. Is that sort of the motivation behind what the Petersen, what you and your leadership team and the Petersen board is doing? You know, because obviously you can't charge admission for this; it's free. So,
well, one of the things that again, as the Switzerland of the automotive world, it's almost an obligation that you know, on a number of different levels. One, for us to provide a platform. One, to be a good partner with people that we have been working with, people that we know, but also to say, how can we remain relevant ourselves during the what should be the you know, the week of the car. This actually turns out to be what will be the world's largest ever online car event. So whether that is important in its own right as a statement, I don't know. But if all of the partners that are participating and just the judges for our concours on the show on Sunday, we've got 100 cars and the who's who of the car world judging. But if all of the partners participate in promoting the week, we'll have a phenomenal turnout. I mean, it's I think we hope it surprises all of us. Let me put it that way.
And no issues with hotels.
No, no hotels. So, you can still get a reservation at Casanova.
Yep.
So Gordon, we're not only, you know, we touched on the McCall Motorworks Revival event, but you are a co-founder of the Quail, and I know the Quail's involved and is doing some pretty interesting stuff virtually. Can you share with us? It's pretty fun stuff too. What are you doing there?
It is fun. You know, we've always, I get a kick every year out of, I'll take a quick stroll during the day of the show through the parking lot. And it's kind of amazing, the cars that are just there in the parking lot with the attendees, our guests. So we have an award that we present for the best car. It's a little arbitrary, but best car in the parking lot, which is a lot of fun. And also, one of our favorite awards, you know, as you know, it's not a traditional concours, Dan, as I know you well know, but we don't have a panel of judges. You know, we don't have the straw hats and blue blazers of teams coming up and telling you what's wrong with your car. It's much more of a social day. I mean, the cars are important, clearly, and we build the show around the cars, but it's more about just having a good time with friends, et cetera, and getting the hospitality of Quail Lodge and what it's all about. we have an award that I love, which is, it's called the Spirit of the Quail. And it's been everything from Jeff Swartz's father and his original TD, a car that in terms of significance may not fall in a category of being a highly significant car, but the story behind it is. And we do an award every year at the show, the Spirit of the Quail. So we're doing a virtual version of that. And we've had some amazing applications come in, all online, all virtual. People are sending us little video clips of their cars with a detailed explanation of the story behind the car. And it's just a way for us to continue to further kind of our mission with that show. It's not just a car show. There is actually a spirit behind it all. So those are a couple of fun things we're doing, and we're doing that during the Petersen Virtual Car Week.
Very cool. That's excellent. So Rob, something I wanted to ask you is, Lotus is kind of like your cars. It's a smaller, more nimble company than some of the other automakers. But I also think that, at least from my perspective, it allows you to be a little more creative and try new things. And I've noticed that, you and the whole PR team, you've been pretty aggressive on social media, trying new things, including, even live chats with people like Magnus Walker, who's sort of traditionally known as a Porsche guy. Can you tell us sort of why you're doing that and how that's been working?
Yeah, the thing with the pivot and the area we find ourselves in is there is this opportunity to do something that you wouldn't normally do. And when we went first into lockdown, we were, everyone was shell shocked and every business was in the same situation. But we looked at, we had two jobs to do. We had to look after the staff and tell the staff what was going on, and we still had to talk to customers and talk to the wider world and promote our brand. So internally, we went very digital very quickly, and we set up an internal web hub for all of our staff. But externally, with the digital stuff, it gave us an opportunity to have fun where we wouldn't normally have time and the ability to have fun. And Magnus, the thing with Magnus is we're the only other brand in his garage that isn't a Porsche. He has an Esprit. Everything else is Porsche, and we're the one brand that he owns that isn't the P cars, and that's just brought us together. And the way I work a lot of the time is I work with people who I admire and want to create stories with, and that's key to this whole period. Really is the need for human interaction is still there, and I think that's key to being and listening to everybody on this panel. The key words keep coming through about interaction, human, and story. And there's a saying that I remember I learned at university about the branding is all about the story, and the best story wins. And that's something I always keep in the forefront of my mind when we're doing any work like this. Is what can we get out of this, and who can we bring together? And that's just car people in general. If you put all of us in a normal room, not just a digital room like this, we could all start talking to each other about the different areas of the world that we come from, and get on. And it doesn't matter if we're from one event or the other, or one car firm or the other. And just for Lotus being so nimble, that gave us the opportunity to do that. So we went out and did a podcast. We went on social. Our marketing team very quickly jumped back onto a hashtag that was My Lotus, and they built a web page for people to submit stories about their Lotus, and then that in turn gave our marketing team content to share and regenerate those conversations about current owners, previous owners, and alike. And yeah, I've seen it so far as a great opportunity, really, to jump on that digital bandwagon that you may not have been so deeply in, and find out what you can do with when the opportunity arises, just to talk to people and keep the conversation going. And obviously with journalists, same thing happens. You still need to talk to them, and they still need stories. Just because you can't drive a car doesn't mean we have a great executive team of execs. So, Phil Popham, our CEO, Matt Windle, our director of engineering. We just turned those guys on, got the phone ringing, and put those guys to work interviewing and talking about the business and where it's going, where we get through this, how do we get through this, and what do we do afterwards. And they're great pieces of content as well to talk to. You know, they've got years of experience, and everybody's come together and put it to use. We've got to help the press. The press want to help us. It's really, I think, one thing about this is just how much it's brought people in our industry together, and you really want to help each other out.
I love that narrative. I think that's a really hopeful message, and I like that, because these days sometimes, especially on our side of the pond, things can be a little divisive. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we'll all get there, and we'll all come out the other side, and in the short term, it's very easy to focus, I think, on our ability to deal in digital, but looking at events and looking at where we're going in the long term, I'm absolutely convinced that, you know, in a few years we'll all be back at events, because it's nothing out without experience, is it? None of this would work. And car shows that, well, Geneva completely, you know, it's already cancelled for next year, and for walking around a big hall like that, you know, you can see why those ones people aren't keen to go back to those. But your Monterey Car Week and your Goodwoods and places like that, you're going to want to get back to those as quickly as possible, because it's not just a car show, it's a full-blown experience, and that's what customers want, and that's what brands want as well.
Dan, if I might comment on, it just occurred to me while we're talking there, the interaction that goes on at the shows, it isn't a matter of coming up to look at cars or bikes, or it's the people you meet. And I'll relate this because so much has happened since something that Gordon did at the Quail Motorcycle Show that Gordon produced and promoted. I was up there, and he said, did you see that bike? I said, what do you mean? He said, no, there's a flat tracker over there. You need to go see the bike. Did you see the bike? No, I didn't see it. Got to go see it. Okay, I saw him later. Did you talk to the guy? No, I didn't talk to the guy. Terry, you got to go talk to the guy. So I went and talked to the guy. It turns out the guy was Richard Varner, who I ended up getting in business with and forming one of 4 partners on Moto America, the motorcycle racing series, through another friend that Gordon introduced us to, Wayne Rainey. But through those relationships and that, Richard Varner became on the board of the Petersen Museum, and he's now the chairman of the board of the Petersen Museum, and also met Bruce Meyer and got more familiar with Gordon, and is now also the president of 1199. And that was because of a friend at a show in Monterey saying, did you go see the guy? Did you talk to the guy? Make sure that you do. That kind of interaction won't happen on the internet or on virtual exchanges like this.
That's a really, really prescient point, Terry. And, you know, Kathy, I swung by the Geary store last week because I had to have a quick conversation with the staff over there. And it was funny because while I was there, I just sort of stood in the middle of the showroom for a few minutes, and I watched a customer come in to do a curbside, and they actually popped in the store. And when they walked in, they smiled and they were beaming. And it was like this little slice of normal life. And it was so meaningful to this person. Yeah. So like the Petersen is sort of the epicenter of car culture. I think Rodeo Drive really is sort of the epicenter of certainly luxury retail. True. What's your take on, you know, are people risking it to come back out just because they want that little taste of normalcy? Where's this all going for retail?
You know, the retailers have taken extreme measures, truly. I mean, you know, some of us, we joke, we can probably conduct surgeries on our sales floors these days, from eco-fogging and gloves and masks and hand sanitizers and UV wands. I mean, we've all become mini, you know, health wizards these days, and we're all very conscious. But at the end of the day, all of us, even here, we deal with the market that it's more of a want, not so much of a physical need or maybe emotional need. So connections, exactly what Terry says, is the same thing. She can absolutely buy that bag online, but for her to get into her car that she hasn't driven for months and come to the store and be able to come in, she's willing to put gloves, she's willing to put masks, she's willing to follow all the procedures just so that she is in her familiar environment. And she doesn't necessarily need to even buy something, just to be able to have access to people. You can't get that through Zoom. You cannot. Fortunately, this is why forever and ever and ever brick and mortar stores will be in business, because there's certain things you just cannot offer to people. They, just like you saw the smile on her face. I deal with that every day. It's just a little glimpse of normalcy. Sitting outside, we can't dine inside restaurants, but if you're sitting on a cobblestone faux road right now, having a glass of champagne, you maybe just for a few milliseconds, you forget that there's a pandemic around you. And that's all we can do.
Yep. The human story, interaction, like Rob said, and like Terry said, I think.
And connection, and not necessarily about product, more about the relationship that will continue for years to come.
Very good. I love it. Now, I know we're kind of running short on time here, so my last question for anyone in the group, silver linings, takeaways, is it, when this thing starts to blow over, obviously there's been hardships for everyone across the board. What will you walk away and think, well, my organization, my team, even you personally, what was something that you took out of this and thought, well, that was something that'll maybe be an improvement in my life or in the way my company runs or my team works?
Hey, I know how to work with Zoom now. Many different aspects of it.
My dry cleaning bill is going to go up.
Listen, I appreciate driving my car more.
Yeah, truth.
Yeah. At every step,
colleagues.
Yeah. And in many ways, we feel that we need less. We don't. It's a good reset in many ways.
That's a good point. And I mean, Roy, what were you going to say?
Well, I just think that, I think we're all going to come out of this, successfully, and it's such a major life event. And I think that when we get to the other side of this, we're going to be better off for it. I mean, it's such a huge challenge for a lot of us right now. And even if it is just not leaving home much anymore, the number of drives I take decreased so much. But being able to see that light at the end of the tunnel, and I think when we get there, it's going to be like, wow, we stuck it out, we did it, and we're all better off for it. And just that keeping a positive attitude, I think, is what it's all about right now.
Agreed.
Yeah. Imagine if this hadn't happened, and Gordon said you've had a summer off, and would we have still just carried on doing everything the same? And now we've been forced to go and look at ourselves, look at how the business is run, look how our industry runs, and we're all going to learn something from this. There's absolutely no way we're going to go back to how it was. Just the simplest things, I think, in the corporate world with us, it's, our business has been turned on its head. We've all suddenly gone, oh, we don't all need to be in a bang on the time and leave, and be in the office 5 days a week. Maybe you can. Personally, life work life balance. Everyone's looked at a few of us and gone, oh, actually, okay, maybe I can work at home, and means I can get to the gym a bit easier instead of working late. And the other guys that used to have to travel all the way over from the other side of the UK, I know that for you guys, that's a quick hop or skipping a jump. That's not a long drive for you, but for us, people were wasting half a day to drive across to come to work for the week, and now we've got all of this opportunity to work together in a form. I think if it hadn't happened, we would have just been on the same road for the next 10 years. In some ways, definitely a positive.
I do not miss sitting in traffic. That is my silver lining. So amen to that. That's been good.
Yeah.
Well, very good. I appreciate everybody's time.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that Bezos will make 13 billion in a day again, but that might slow him down a little bit.
Yeah, if there's a victor in this deal, it's definitely Amazon.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Well, thank God for Amazon. We would have lost all of our minds if there was no Amazon. So it's okay. It's okay.
We have an extensive collection of cardboard at my house. So
Daily, right? Daily. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much, Rob, Kathy, Rory, Terry, Gordon. I really appreciate all your time. I know you're busy and it's hard to carve out time for another Zoom call. So thank you very much. I enjoyed this and I hope you did too. And I hope everyone who's watching learned a little something.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks for
Good
including
Nice to meet you all.
Absolutely.
Bye. Stay safe,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.